Arnie, you know why I have a smile on my face today.
We're talking about food.
We're talking about food.
Our favorite topic.
You and I love talking about food. Even when we didn't have a radio show, we talked a lot about food.
I mean, what else is there? Sports, women or partners,
Our
potential
wives.
partners, or food.
Right.
And, at a certain age, food becomes the number one topic of conversation, maybe along with seeing doctors and going to hospitals and, medication. So what medication are you on, Scott? But anyway, we're talking about food. And as you know, Missoula's becoming much more of a foodie town.
It has.
In the last few years, even since you've moved here.
Yes, 5 years.
When I first showed up here 20-something years ago, I ate a lot of times at gas stations on the way back and forth to work.
I think about that all the time, by the way, yeah. That you used to do that.
Yeah, stop and get 3 corn dogs for $1, or, pre-made pizza, or, breakfast burritos. I mean, that was the kind of...
You were ahead of your time, by the way, because now those are all TV shows on the Travel Channel or the Food Network.
That's right. But there were restaurants here, but they went from basically fast food to to bar food to upscale, and there was not much in between. But now we have a plethora of ethnic restaurants in town, from Brazilian food to Japanese food to Thai food to Vietnamese food.
Yeah,
we're missing a good.
And more's
New York,
coming too.
Yeah, we're missing a New York style deli.
Yes.
I know more's coming with the opening of the
Andy's place.
Yeah, the
Merc.
Yeah, at the Merc, the new what is it? It's a Regency.
It's a Marriott.
Residence Inn.
Yeah,
Marriott Residence Inn, and they're going to have 2 or 3 restaurants in there.
I think 4.
4?
Yeah.
That's going to be spectacular. We'll have to just get a room, and hang out there. But today we're going to talk with Drake, who is the owner of Saketome, which has been a successful Japanese sushi restaurant in Big Fork, Montana, up on the lake.
Yes.
And in recent times, and in the past 6 months, has opened in downtown Missoula, and now has combined 2 restaurants in one.
Yeah.
Because the main floor, expansive main floor, is his Saketome restaurant with and sushi focused, and the lower level now is a ramen restaurant.
Oh, I'm so excited! I haven't had ramen yet.
Well, it's very good, obviously, and I've been to both, and we'll be going back to both, and it's nice to have another change of pace in Missoula.
So we're going to learn all about Drake. Let's get his background. Let's know where he's from, how he got involved in the business, and I am curious to know what he thinks some of the holes are in the market as well.
Yeah, and it's nice to talk to a non-Asian about running an Asian restaurant. So,
have you ever been to Han Dynasty in New York City?
Yeah.
So I did some research about the Han Dynasty when I was there last. They're all throughout Philadelphia and New York, mostly a lot in Philadelphia. Anyway, it's a presentation of Chinese food, Szechuan Chinese food, but in a decidedly upscale way, right? So they're presenting the food in a way that feels more accessible to people that are used to going to fine Italian, or seafood places. But it's not like walking into a Chinese restaurant, which you and I know to be pictures of the food on the wall, or
Well, it's funny because
Lotus is on the wall.
I've mentioned this to you. I was in Japan for a week,
right,
in the last couple of years, and they never served sushi. I never ate sushi in a week. It never was on the menu any place that I was.
You just ate cool things.
I ate whatever, and it's equally as interesting. I was in China many, many times,
right,
and rarely did they serve rice with the meals.
Yeah, that takes up unnecessary space.
So I'm just so the things that we think of, if you say Chinese food, you think of rice.
We've Americanized
you think
it.
of Japanese and sushi. It's not necessarily what's being consumed in their marketplace.
You're right. And I think my point about Han was to talk to Drake about presentation, like the ambience, setting the mood the minute before you even walk in, like how to create that atmosphere with the clientele to where you've heightened their expectations, and then you got to deliver with the food.
Well, we have one thing lacking here that you would find in other markets.
What's that?
Often when you're traveling, if you're in San Francisco or L.A. or New York, and you're not familiar with the restaurant, you would look in to see if there were a lot of Asian clientele, and that's always a good representation.
You're 100% right.
Well, we don't have a very large Asian community here, so that's not the way that we can judge whether or not the food meets standard.
He's so right. Anyway, we'll be coming back with Drake from Saketome. And what is the name of the ramen place?
We'll have to ask him. It's
okay.
I forget.
So we'll be back with Drake, who oversees Saketome here in Missoula, one of Missoula's newest Japanese restaurant, back after these words. All right, we are back with chef, owner, operator Drake Depke from Saketome. Hey,
How's
Drake.
it going?
Good. How are you?
Good to be here.
So first thing, before we ask you about your background and how much you had to go into debt to open these restaurants, tell me about the name, Saketome. How'd you come up with it?
Saketome. A buddy of mine, we were sitting around in my little bungalow in Hawaii, and I knew I was coming back. I knew I was coming back to the mainland to open a sushi restaurant, and we just were sitting around smoking clove cigarettes and trying to figure out what the best name for a sushi restaurant would be, and eventually we landed on Saketome, and once it happened, it was like, that's the name.
And is that buddy involved in the restaurant?
No, he was a chef friend of mine that was working out there, and we were all just hanging out and surfing together.
What year was that?
2009.
2009. Okay.
Yeah.
So you came back.
2009.
Had you run a restaurant before or worked in the restaurant business?
Yeah, worked. Some management, but never owned. Operated, but never owned.
Wow.
And
That's a big leap.
And why did you pick Big Fork, Montana to take your leap into the future?
So my folks live up there. So it was the most, or I should say the least daunting, let's say, of places, because it was be close to the people that you knew, and I had lived there for a couple of years beforehand, so I knew the area, I knew the people, and I felt comfortable with the demographic, and the price was right on the lease and things like that.
And how did you learn to operate a sushi-focused restaurant?
So that's
well.
that was a lot.
First, let me preface that.
Yeah, right.
Many of the sushi restaurants are run by somebody who worked in a sushi restaurant or his family's in the business. Many of them, as you know, are Asian-run. You are non-Asian. So,
how do you know that?
It's theater of the mind.
Yeah, right.
But for our listeners, he's not.
Sure.
Drake is a handsome non-Asian guy. So
Yeah.
how did you figure out how to do this?
I mean, like a big affinity from it came. My dad was a philosophy professor, and he used to teach over in Asia when I was in high school.
Where was he a philosophy professor?
He was a philosophy professor at University of Denver, and then he also was at CU Boulder, and then he was doing sabbaticals in Beijing and in Nepal. So we would go over there when we were in high school. And,
I see.
And spend time with them. So the affinity for Asia grew in those experiences, and then working in restaurants my whole life since I was like 14, it just gravitated to the Asian style of food and blew my mind, going over to China and walking into these little holes in the wall and having some of the best food you've ever had in your life. That was, it just kind of
We were just talking
blew the lid.
before you came in. I've been in China many, many times. I've gone there often for 2 weeks at a time and never seen rice served to you in a restaurant.
No,
even.
you never get rice.
No, you don't get rice.
You don't get
Everybody
rice.
thinks, where's the rice? It's not there.
Right.
It's in people's homes.
It's
like,
unnecessary filler, actually.
well, no,
rice.
it's like, would you go out and order cornflakes? No, you eat it at home. So when you got to the restaurant, you ordered different sort of things.
Drake, question though.
Yeah.
So, like, what? Having been at your restaurant before, I think one of the key things is presentation. Like the minute you walk in, or even see it from the street level, your expectation is that this is going to be something's different happening here. I mean, there's a
Well,
vibe
particularly
to
in
it,
Missoula, in the new spot
Right.
in Missoula.
which is a good thing actually, because you set the expectation for the diner, like something special's about to happen.
So for me, that's half the fun, right? I mean, I love good cuisine, and of course that's the onus and that's the focus, making sure that the food's on point, the drinks are on point, the service is on point, but it's also all the little details that surround you as you're dining, and those are the little things that you notice, and then it kind of adds to this total experience of when you're sitting down and dining. So design for us is a huge part of the experience, which is not something that you necessarily would consider in like a budget or something. Like how do we account for design, and why is that important? It's like it's not something you can really kind of equate, but in my opinion, it's super critical and important to giving that a unique dining experience.
Sure.
Well, particularly in the Missoula restaurant, because you have the upstairs that has a certain kind of ambiance.
Yeah.
And then you go down stairs and is at the new ramen focused restaurant, and you get a whole different experience, both equally cool.
Well, and I agree with you. I haven't been to the ramen, but let's stay upstairs for a second. So when you walk in and you see some of those sculptures, the visuals, like the art on the walls.
Right.
That right there is just like that. You don't see that in Missoula. You just don't.
Does that make you feel guilty walking in flip-flops and cutoffs?
No, you know what? I feel
we're cool with that.
Exactly. I know. We are in Missoula.
Right.
We're in Missoula. I just feel really like that. Like there's care. Like there's something that's going in here they care about it, and that you think that then translates to the service and to the food.
Well, I also like the open kitchen.
I agree completely. I mean, you set the tone, right? Like, so you set the tone from the dining experience, but it's also from the employees. Like when they walk in,
right?
They recognize that this is it's serious environment. It's not a serious environment. They're walking in. It's like this is an environment that obviously people have put time and effort in on. And so maybe we should too.
Right. This isn't a food truck converted to a restaurant. I mean, there's an open bar so you can watch how the preparation, an open kitchen for the preparation. The bar is one of the best stocked bars and up to date in what's trendy. For example, rums are trendy now. You can't walk in and get Zacapa in only one other place, maybe in Missoula. Even across the street where you got several bars, they don't carry that. You walk in, bartender not only knows what it is compared to other drinks. So I'm very impressed with that.
How is it to staff the place? Like you've been open for 2.5 months now.
I mean, I'm coming from Big Fork, so that place is the hardest place maybe in the world to staff because it's just so limited and what you can pull from. So coming down here is actually it's a breath of fresh air. I mean, in the way that because and it's pretty cool to watch because it's basically like a core sample of the demographic that lives in Missoula, right? So you're seeing who lives here. So when you do we did like 125 interviews when we first started to make sure that we were, getting who we wanted to begin with. And it was like, man, everyone was cool. They were nice. They were interesting. They had passions. They had hobbies, and and they were educated and seemed to be enthusiastic. So for me, Missoula has been a great place to staff, to be honest.
Did you work at all with the culinary school with Suzanne and the folks over at?
I did not. No, and it's not something that not something I'm opposed to. I think it's just another untapped resource that people can look at.
Yeah,
I have to reinforce what Drake said. Downstairs, your bartender Ty, right? He's worked in other places. He's traveled a lot. When you're sitting at the bar, having a conversation with the bartender, he's interesting to talk to.
Yeah.
It's not a guy who's just coming back from hunting or fishing. Not that there's anything wrong with that. No. But he has a much broader base, so it's kind of cool. You can come back and say,
It sets the mood.
Yeah. And most of your I guess general manager Scott. Same thing. Safari in Tanzania, traveled around.
So he's interesting.
That's what we're finding. I mean, and so Trey, he was a bartender in Vegas for the last 15 years, so his knowledge base is massive. And the fact that he's here in Missoula is it's a coincidence and also a fortunate coincidence for us that we could get him. And, Scott was a longtime buddy of mine down in Bozeman, but he's traveled a lot. He's got a ton of restaurant experience. He's just a nice guy, so that's really big for us. And then Tim, our other manager, he and I have been friends for 15 years, and we've traveled all over the world together. And
your bartender upstairs is cool.
Yeah, Wade.
So let's keep on going through the upstairs for a second. Mm-hmm. So you walk in, you have a beautiful sushi bar to the right, and the bar's there too, correct?
Yeah, they're connected. It's basically this long.
It's a beautiful presentation. But then you have the high top. You have those high tops right there. And why is that? Why does a restaurant do that in the front? Is it just a show?
For me, I think it's just a feeling thing. And I always just operate just kind of off that gut and I think when you change elevations, it gives people different perspective while they're eating, and it kind of puts you up, it props you up if you do the high tops, and then if you do kind of low tops. So there's all these different vibes that you can basically choose from based on just changing your position on how you're.
Well, if you want to check out who's there, and if you have any friends or enemies, you can sit in the high tops.
Right.
When you're on a date or with the family, you want to be in the low tops.
Well, we ate at the high tops, and then I walked in the back just to check out the place, and I saw some friends back there, and I was like, it's a different vibe back there. It's a little quieter.
But what's amazing is you would never, ever in a million years know that was a Mackenzie River pizza place before that.
Yeah.
I mean, and I don't even know what they did with the lower level. Was the lower level
It was
just
like
storage?
a prep kitchen. I mean, if you did like one of those before and after,
Oh,
yeah,
like
that
really?
basement is great. Yeah.
HGTV, like
John
shows.
Taffer.
Oh my god.
Well, they did a great job with rock and brick and
Well,
I mean,
that begs the
stuff's
question.
natural.
That begs
Yeah,
the
it's
question.
really cool.
Actually, did you actually consult anybody when you did your first restaurant? Like, was there a restaurant consultant? Because I know they exist.
Oh, I mean, for us, I was probably just too young and too stupid to know any better.
Right.
So, like, the gusto was there. And it was just one of those trial by fire things. I mean, I was very comfortable in a kitchen and in a restaurant. So it wasn't like I was picking something like I'm going to become a professional
welder.
or something. Welder. I mean, I knew what I was doing. So it was within my field, but there was so much that you, of course, don't know. I mean, I didn't know how to generate a QuickBooks report, before I opened it.
Right.
It was like, you just, that stuff you learn. I learned so much just on the go and of doing it and understanding just that this is a necessity. This is just something you have to learn how to do. So that was just developmental over the years of doing it.
Sure. So in the preparation for opening Missoula, you had 9 years of working through Big Fork and learning.
That's right. That restaurant had been open for 9 years. So that really did kind of
And you learned a lot, I would imagine.
Set it up and hone it. I mean, there's no way we could have done something on this scale if I was to revert back to my 25-year-old self. I mean,
Right.
Right.
Tell me what are the key learnings in those 9 years that you feel helped you?
Just understanding the business aspect of it, really getting to understand that back end and what it really takes to do it, the personnel issues.
Don't use old fish.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I want to get to
Keep it fresh. Yeah, don't get people sick. Right?
But is it like is it the business? It's the business end more.
It's the business end. It's also just it's the personal end. It's understanding how you need to present yourself to the community that you're involved in and kind of to the world at large. You're not just your own little world anymore. You're a representation of what you're doing, and that is in direct proportion to the business. That
Yeah, and once a restaurant, as you know, gets a bad rap,
it's done.
It's tough to reverse.
Basically impossible.
So let me ask you this: you're 500 miles from the coast.
Right.
How do you get fresh fish?
Yeah, great question.
I mean, the world's pretty small now, right?
Right.
Like, you got FedEx and you got UPS, and these guys. I mean, they're flying. Plus, we've got local airports now, and we've got a lot of direct flights coming in from Seattle now. So, honestly, the transporting of it is really not the issue anymore. I mean, it's more that you just have to make sure that the people that are handling it in the very beginning are handling it appropriately, making sure it's getting on ice and stuff like that right away. Those are the biggest time lapses, right? It's not so much, getting it to us. It's more like, how is it being treated?
Is it highly regulated?
And it is. I mean, there's a lot.
You should go. You should see the fish market in Tokyo.
Yeah, Tsukiji, it's crazy.
Unbelievable.
wow.
I mean, 3:00 in the morning, there are guys going out looking at tuna, taking different pieces.
That movie, the Euro plays.
Yeah, I mean, I was
Yeah.
in one tuna. There could be a cut that would be $50 and one that'd be $400 in the same tuna, and that thing's got to get packed out that day into a restaurant the next day.
Right.
I mean, it's pretty amazing how efficient that is.
They have a huge GDP. It's like $5 billion a year. It's more than like most countries.
Yeah, no, it's
the fish market.
Oh yeah. It's they have tours of it just so you can see this whole thing in operation.
You know what I was going to bring up? When I was in New York last, the Fulton's fish market.
This thing makes the New York Stock Exchange seem primitive how they operate. I'm just telling you. If you ever watch the Stock Exchange, you can't figure out what all the runners are
They're
doing.
just yelling and shouting.
The fish market's worse.
I bet they had a problem at the Fulton Fish Market. They were getting the whistle blown on them for serving up oysters, shellfish that weren't properly marked and it's so highly regulated, right? And I talked to a restaurateur in New York, and I said, "Hey, I just saw this news story on this." He goes, "You realize once we get a shipment of something, it could be weeks before it's the next,
Well, it's not only that; it's the fact that people don't really know. I mean, there was a whole scandal a while back about sea bass. 80% of it wasn't sea bass.
Is there right?
It was like tilapia or something, which isn't even a real fish.
I think there's such a incentive to fudge it, right? Because if you can, chefs get a little too proud maybe, and they say, "Well, I can put some alchemy into this and turn this tilapia into the Chilean sea bass because I'm that good of a chef." And it's like,
Yeah, well,
maybe you're not.
Question for you. So as we're talking about the business, you need to have liquor, right, and alcohol to make the margins work.
Restaurants
correct?
are tough. I mean, yeah, I think without it, your margins are just razor thin.
Right.
Without it, I mean, you have to. Everything else has to just be absolutely razor thin. I think you can do kind of the quicker serve, sort of what you're saying with like the Chipotle style of restaurant, where it's the quick serve.
Yeah, 5 on black kind of thing.
Yeah, it's that model. I think that model you can do it without booze. I think you can do it. The margins are razor thin, but your food costs are low, your employee costs are low, But if you're going to do sit-down fine dining, I mean, liquor, you got to have it in some form or another, either beer and wine at the very least. And obviously it's better if you can get a liquor
Did you acquire the liquor license when buying the property? Through
the McKinsey had a beer and wine license, so we had to go out and get a liquor license.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Without asking you how much it was.
It's a lot.
I know it's a lot. But you saw it as you needed to do it to be competitive and to get the margins. I would imagine.
Mean, it's not a hey, we're open for 1 year prospect.
You're right.
10 years. So you either do it either all the way or you don't do it at all. So.
By the way, let's do a quick ID. Our guest is Drake Depke, owner, operator, chef of Saketome here in Missoula, Missoula's newest restaurant.
Let me talk about menu.
Mm-hmm.
How did that come together? I mean, there's all kinds of, obviously, sushi. There's all kinds of appetizers that fall under the genre of Japanese, Asian. How did you cull that down to a menu that you're comfortable with, and are you still experimenting with the menu? Oh,
absolutely. I mean, it's constant in fluctuation, and it will be for the entire life of this project. We will always be reinventing the menu, and what we found over the years is, because initially when we first started out, it was just sushi, because that's all I had room for. It was a 500, square foot building, and it was just me, and it was like, okay, all I can do is a little bit of appetizers and making sushi. But now we've started to kind of branch out as much as we possibly can to include a wider variety of stuff, so that it's not about reaching everyone, but it's saying, okay, look, there's 5 sushi eaters in a party. There's one person who doesn't eat sushi.
Right.
You need to accommodate that person.
Right.
Because otherwise that 6-top isn't coming in. So, and we're also, we're cooks. So I'm a cook. I want to be creative. I want to be doing new stuff all the time. And so if we can cook beef, we're going to cook beef. If we can cook, bird, we'll cook bird. So it's to keep the whole range.
And in Missoula, you have
whole palette
in the
available.
Missoula area, not Missoula. Missoula's pretty hip. But in the general Montana area, you have to educate your customers to some extent.
Sure.
I had a friend here that had a Italian restaurant that they had opened down in Hamilton, and they couldn't take it anymore because people kept on. They would order pasta, and then they would ask them if they had any ketchup, so they could pour ketchup on top of it to make it taste like they made it at home.
That's
and
so
you
awful.
do have people here that maybe if they think they know sushi, they know California roll, and that's it.
And there's that. But you're right about Missoula being a much more educated and diverse clientele base. So you're not running into that as much, I think. But also, if somebody's walking through the door into a sushi restaurant, they're probably not going to be
a first
time or ham and eggs.
They're going to be somebody who already wants to eat interesting food. They're not like.
Except for that 6th person in the party who they drag along.
Right,
you have
exactly.
options for them.
The friend,
Drake, let's 2 questions. Part 1, where do you get your inspiration from in terms of your menu? Like, are there places that you've traveled to or been to where you feel like, hey, I like their presentation, I like their menu? Like, obviously you've traveled a great deal.
Sure. I mean, definitely traveling and just seeing what other chefs are doing. I mean, we're all, it's an industry of stealing and borrowing and all that. So there's a bit of that. And then it's also just, you have to conceptualize it. And it's just like doing anything else. You have to kind of think about it from the ground up and like, okay, are these components going to work well together? How do we want this dish to look? You literally draw diagrams of it on pieces of paper to conceptualize how it's going to look before you make it. And then it's also just a trial by fire and making it and saying, hey, look, I think it would be better with this ingredient. I think it would be better with this and that. And
are you able to be objective if it's your idea and like to have criticism coming?
To be, yeah,
you do, right? Because
I want to hear it. I want to hear an honest critique, and we take that stuff to heart. We'll listen to it, and we see it sometimes, but sometimes it's like, hey, look, I think this could be a little better, and it's like, yeah, you know, I'll listen to that, because you can't be too proud in this. You know, these are the people that.
Right. I was my part 2 question is, how do you feel about competition? Like, do you feel like it's like rising tides lift all boats? And
Absolutely.
So if everyone's successful, that's good, because then you'll be successful.
You want a food culture, right? You want a food scene. Like, you want people that are driving up the culture of it, because then that drives up your clientele for everyone. Everyone's clientele gets more educated, gets more involved. You start to be able to sell some of the things that are harder to sell sometimes because it's not as familiar. So everyone's real familiar with tuna, but not everyone's familiar with monkfish liver or uni. So these are the ones that you want to sell, and you have to be able to sell those to an educated clientele, or at least a enthusiastic clientele. And so the more restaurants that are pushing the envelope and doing cool things, it makes a food culture. And that's really what you want.
Did you personally sample some of the other restaurants in town before you opened up Saketome?
Definitely. I lived here for like 8 months before we actually opened, so I pretty much ate around everywhere. And
you know what's going on. Here, so. When you were living in Hawaii, was there an inspirational go-to restaurant there, like Roy's or something that you went to where you liked what they were doing and you know, maybe borrowed something from?
You know, I worked at a sushi restaurant out there called Sushi and Blues, and it was a good restaurant.
Which island?
Kauai.
Oh, it was on Kauai.
Kauai, North Shore Kauai. So it's a little different out there, a little country. It's not like being in Maui or
well, it's like being in Big Fork.
It's like being in Big Fork. Very much like being in Big Fork. So, I mean, not necessarily maybe from a creative perspective, but definitely from a, you know, how do we make sure that we're preparing this fresh fish in the best possible way? I mean,
plus they have the same thing in a weird way that we have here, particularly in the summer. You have locals, and then you have tourists.
Right.
And when you're in Kauai, it's a different mix. They're coming out of the Fairmont Hotel, right, and they're spending $600 a night to be there, and they want a different kind of experience than somebody who's an employee in that restaurant who's off on Sunday and going in. And we have the same thing here.
Right.
Particularly this time of year, you're going to have a lot of tourists coming in who've been fly fishing with a $500 a day guide, and they come into town, and they're going to want a good experience.
And they've eaten it all. You know, they're probably coming from Arizona or Florida or California or whatever, and
their palates are more expanded,
with
right?
Something, and they're looking. And that's what we found in Big Fork too, because a lot of the clientele up there is, you know, wealthy people from out of town during the summertime. So you're having to appease that clientele and then also appease the local clientele as well. So, but what I've found, and I think Missoula's even better in that regard, is that the local clientele really does appreciate quality, is what I'm saying. So,
well, you are lucky. You got the Mansfield Center for Asian Studies. You got several hundred.
That's
Asian
a great point,
students,
actually. Yeah,
on campus. You have people that have had, a lot of international travel experience. It's amazing how many people here have traveled around the world and gone places and done things. And so it is for a Montana town. It's a different makeup than if you were in Butte or if you were in Great Falls.
Right.
You have the university, you have the tourism center. It's a lot of people come and stop on their way going somewhere right off of the interstate. Let's stop in this town.
Yeah.
We're one of the closest towns right off the interstate. You can see downtown. You can see the downtown. So there's a lot of mix of more upper end people than you might imagine who would be available to be clientele for a place like that.
And it seems to me that there's a lot of people that are moving from kind of these larger metropolises. A lot of people I've talked to, it seems like there's a pretty strong Chicago connection here for some reason.
Well, there's a lot of the tech companies have been bringing them in from other places, and some of them are
Chicago,
definitely. In
the summer, and now they have flights. They have the direct flights coming in
huge
for the summer.
I mean, that's really what makes it. If they can, the accessibility.
Yeah, I've run into 4 or 5 people in the last couple of weeks who have moved here, and they're coming from Portland, Chicago, L.A., New York to work at tech companies here because they want to get out of the rat race.
Sure.
And they're used to a different restaurant scene.
And I think having those amenities, but then also not, to your point, being in the rat race has got to be hugely attractive for people that are trying to get out of those metropolises.
Has the city been easy to work with? Like I've spoken to different proprietors, and they've said, look, in some instances, yes, they've cleared the way on certain things. In other words, like, why is the sign ordinance this way, or why is this way? And so I don't want you to hold back, but at the same time,
I mean, I don't want to poo-poo anything, but our experience has been ultimately good. There hasn't been. I mean, my impression was when I was dealing with the state official or the city officials was that it was a collaboration, but there were things that they had agreed upon that they wanted to preserve and to do correctly and to maintain a certain culture that it seems to me that they're trying to build and a vision for the city as a whole.
Right.
And I get that. I support that. And we just want to be a piece of that. We're not trying to come in and kind of push our weight around. We're saying, hey, like, we want to be within it, but allow the creativity. And we didn't really run into much that was stopping us.
Right. And that Front Street corridor, that corridor from where the triangle will be, right, the all the way down to Finn and Porter or whatever it is going to be called, even actually the school, the college, like, in 5 years, it's not going to look the same.
No.
And you happen to be a big piece of that, the composition of what it's going to look like.
Well, you must have gone, yes, the day you were able to get that location, because in restaurants, location is really
everything,
really
huge,
important.
Yeah.
And you're in one of the primo locations. In fact, one of our other guests who has Sweet Peaks moved from where they were around the corner from Jimmy John's to Front Street just because they needed that exposure.
Did you talk to Marissa?
Yeah. She's
great.
Yeah, she's great. Mm-hmm. And they're doing great. And that shop is busy much more
it
than
changed
the other
everything
ones.
for them.
Totally changed. So location really, obviously,
and it's
we all
funny
know that
too
makes
because
a
you
difference.
wouldn't think that location that they had before was that bad,
right?
Because it was still like right off of Higgins, but it's amazing. Front
well,
Street
they also got
that
another little advantage
corridor.
there. They got the carousel, so people take their kids to the carousel.
Perfect.
You got the ice cream, place.
By the way, and Jimmy John's does very well over there because bar people need places to go and eat something to sop up all that alcohol.
Sure.
Now, do you find that local service people come to your place after hours? Like, I know one of the benefits of having a restaurant is if you can get that after hour service crowd in, that they'll spend time there. You can have a late night menu or a.
So that's what we're trying to cultivate with the ramen bar. Obviously, it's more of people who are like getting off. They still want to eat something, and they just want to be in a place that's not the place they work in.
Right.
Yep.
I have to get out of the building, right? Like, so hopefully that'll cultivate.
You can
that
even
a
do music down there.
And we did a little music this last Saturday. We're going to start doing it a little bit more to kind of we really it would be great. That would feel like such an accomplishment. I think if it did end up being like a bit of a service industry crowd, I would love that.
What are the hours of the ramen what are going to be the hours of the ramen?
Ultimately we'll be open all the time, right? Like, as much as we can during the day and at night and late night. But the ramen,
you're not open for lunch now.
Not currently, but
Saturday
it's in the
night,
works.
night.
Yeah.
We're going to be open as much as we possibly can eventually. But right now it's the ramen's 5 till late. So, if there's a good crowd, if people are hanging out, we'll be hanging out with you. And
nice.
Well, the good thing is, the summer concert series, the Wilma's going to be rocking all summer. Mm-hmm. You got people coming back downtown from the Kettle House.
The Kettle House, yeah.
Most of them are taking buses. That's a go-to kind of place to go at night.
And look, like, across the street, Top Hat has upped their game in food.
Absolutely.
You got a couple of new restaurants that are coming in at the Merc.
Yep.
It's going to be good for everybody.
I agree.
It really will be.
I do like the late because even though the Top Hat has food, that food really disappears once the music starts happening.
Yeah, 10 o'clock it's done.
And then when you leave and you've had a few shots, right across the street you can get a nice bowl of ramen before you go home. It's perfect.
I think it'd be great. Mm-hmm. Are you with the ramen place? That's a new concept for you, or you
totally new.
So tell us about that. How did that kind of come to fruition? How did you develop that?
I'm always thinking about new ideas. I've been pigeonholed, rightfully so, into being a sushi guy or whatever. But I've got 20, 30 business ideas always swirling around in my head at any given point. But to me, the ramen was just an absolute no-brainer, especially with the pairing with sushi. And when we were looking at the space, we saw that it was a 2-story building, and we really needed to kind of have I just didn't feel comfortable. I didn't want to do, let's just say, a 200-person sushi restaurant, So I wanted to say, okay, we'll do the sushi upstairs. So what are we doing downstairs? And so then I dove into my bag of ideas, and I'm like, oh, man, I've always wanted to have a ramen restaurant. This is the time. Originally, we were thinking about doing kind of like an Asian street food thing, but and that evolved into, well, we've always wanted a ramen restaurant. So what are we doing? Like, we've got this space. Let's do a ramen restaurant.
Wow. Did you have to bring in any special like recipes, chefs?
So Tim and I have the friend that I've traveled with, and for a lot of the time, he and I have worked on these recipes and gotten them dialed, and I'm stoked about where we're at right now as far as the product.
How about supply chain, by the way? Is there enough? Is there a good supplier that you can get all this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, this one's easier, right? Because we're talking about pork and chicken for the most part,
right?
And noodles,
fish cake,
noodles, yeah, some fish cake,
and eggs, the right eggs, because you got to
get the right eggs.
You got to have more than an orange yolk, not that bland yolk.
But so that's an easier supply chain, frankly. I mean, that's stuff we can find. Living River Farms down in the Bitterroot, and
for our listeners, I just want to point out the Japanese take their ramen really seriously.
Oh, yeah.
And my favorite ramen restaurant in Tokyo is one you walk up to, and there's a big sort of like vending machine looking thing on the door where they have 20 or 30 different ramens.
Right.
And you pick out the one you want, and you put money in, and you get a token for that specific ramen.
Yeah.
And then you walk inside, and there's just long tables, and there's like 12 guys in the kitchen. All they're doing is noodles and
turning it
broth,
over.
And you put your token down, and somebody comes over, and they bring you a bowl, the size of a salad bowl, filled with ramen for lunch.
I love ramen.
Yeah.
By the way, portion size is how does it go, and how do you determine? Because your portions are great. I mean, I felt full. Like I could get a roll, a specialty roll, and a salad, and I felt like I was good to go for the night.
Perfect, and that's what we want. We want you walking out being like, yeah, like I spent money and it was appropriate. The value was there to the amount that I spent.
Yeah,
you were a cheap date. I usually get 3 rolls just to make sure I.
But you know what the problem is? When I do that, when I eat too many rolls, I feel so stuffed.
But only for an hour.
No, I feel like I'm moving into the mode with sushi where I just want to leave feeling a little lighter, not super stuffed.
Okay, well then you have to have some appetizers because they got great appetizers.
Well, I love appetizers. I like the edamame and I like the seaweed salad.
Sounds like I'm working for you, Drake.
That's the way I eat it. When I go, I mean, if I go to a sushi restaurant, that's the way I would eat. That's the way I would eat it. I would get sake and like a light beer, and I would eat like sashimi and nigiri, and I would get like a sumamono, and I would get just kind of
little tastes,
and then I'll get a roll too. But like so that's the way I eat it, and that's the way I think people should eat it. And then in the traditional sense, it would be exactly that. You would have sashimi, you would have like small like salads, and it's called otsumami, these small little dishes. And then you would end with a nigiri course, which would just be a couple of fish, over rice.
Right, and
that would be it.
Some people need to be educated because when you talk to somebody who's going to get sushi who isn't educated, they say, "Well, fish and rice, that's not a meal."
Right.
What am I gonna get? Some rice with some fish?
Rice is so filling, though. And I don't like to get filled on rice. Drake, question.
Sure.
What I was very impressed with, one of the things I judge a good sushi restaurant by is the seaweed. So I had the seaweed salad. I like the fact that it was different types of seaweed.
Yes.
Not that green, you know what I'm talking about, sesame oil. And
we had to search long
flakes.
and hard for a while to find that because we wanted that. We didn't. I was super unhappy.
And a light
with that
sauce
product.
too.
Yeah.
And that made the difference. I was like, these guys care. Like it's like I judge Chinese restaurants by hot and sour soup. I judge Japanese places by their quality of seaweed.
Well, I appreciate you noticing that because we've been trying to elevate that for a long time, and because there's a standard product for a seaweed salad that people are real familiar with. We're like,
not it.
If we're trying to elevate it, you can't be throwing that stuff out.
Right, exactly.
So.
Marnie, I'm going to throw something out there to you. Let's do a little speed round, okay?
Right.
I'm going to say a city that we've all been to. And then I want to do your favorite restaurants in those cities. Let's talk about Japanese food, okay? We've all been to L.A.
Right.
L.A.
Sugarfish.
I like what is Sushi Raku, right
Sushi
there. Roku on Santa Monica Boulevard, right down by the water.
Okay, Matsuhisa. New York.
Well, you can't pick one restaurant.
In Lower East Side.
I have to go to Le Bernardin.
I'm talking sushi.
Oh well, they're fish.
I love
close enough.
Love Benedict.
You can't. It's a high. It's a 3-star Michelin restaurant.
Eric
He's
Rippier,
right.
man.
That's his
I love that
go-to.
dude.
Sushi.
Matter of fact, the chef there just did the eulogy for Anthony Bourdain. At his
Oh, is that
funeral.
right?
Yeah.
All right, mine is Blue Ribbon
All right.
downtown. All right, Chicago. No, forget it. Seattle.
Andy's Seafood House, but it's not sushi.
How about your favorite restaurant in Seattle?
Favorite restaurant in Seattle?
Doesn't have to be Asian.
God, frankly, I don't really have one. Revel in Fremont.
Revel. What kind of food is it?
It's like an Asian style restaurant.
Really?
Yeah, and it's in Fremont. Really good food. Bomb.
Revel.
Revel. Revel.
You're going
I
there.
I like the place in Queen Anne. That's the Cajun restaurant. They have they have great Cajun breakfast there, and it's considered like the second or third best Cajun restaurant in the United States outside of New Orleans.
Really?
Yeah.
I
terrific.
found a good Szechuan place in Bellevue that I really like.
Sweet.
Plus, I like that old-fashioned one that's right.
I mean, if you really want Asian, you just cross over and go to Vancouver, right?
Yeah.
And go to Richmond. That's where you go because
that's
the
true.
best Asian food I've ever had outside of China.
Well, there's a fantastic place up in Vancouver.
You've given me a couple of recommendations.
Yeah, Misu's, which is right in downtown, right in the heart of everything.
Where's the one that you said is that the one that's overlooking the seaport?
That place is fantastic.
Where they use a lot of expensive but good.
No, it's terrific. And
It's Canadian.
it's as good as any one I've had, eaten in Japan. I mean, they have a lot of places that serve calamari. But
Right.
this calamari is the best I've ever had, and that's not easy to say because you eat a lot of calamari in a lot of places. But I've had 2 or 3 people come with me and they scoffed when I said this is the best, and then they eat it and they say, "This is the best."
This is the best calamari.
So lightly fried, and it's really, chewy, soft, and the sauce is this sweet and sour sauce. You dip it; it's just like perfect.
Arnie,
Perfect.
we love food.
Yeah, you can tell.
Drake Depke is our guest. He is the chef, owner, operator, and all things Saketome at Saketome down on Front Street. Here's a question, boys. In our remaining moments. What type of restaurant does Missoula need that they don't currently have?
So I know they have the ones that are coming in under the Merc, and I think they are encompassing 2 that I think are needs, which are the Thai and the Mexican. I think a really good Italian restaurant.
Bingo.
And a French. Well, no, because they have the Pearl. Yeah. So no, I think the Italian one is the one that I notice right away, where it's like, where is that great homemade pasta?
Yeah, there's
Southern Italian.
So to me, there's
Northern
2 or 3.
Italian, because you have northern over at
Chow Mambos.
Well,
Let's not talk about.
What's the one over Cafe Dolce?
Cafe Dolce. Yeah.
Pretty good, but
and I love that.
The best Italian is down in Stevensville at Marie's. Period.
Okay.
End of discussion.
Nobody said Chinese, which I am a big fan of Chinese food. Huge fan.
I think there's just a big difference between like Americana Chinese and like true Chinese. Like, and I think if it was like a true Chinese restaurant, oh man, it would.
We had one for a short period of time with a chef from Hong Kong called Hong Kong Chef, but it didn't make it because it was more.
I remember Hong Kong Chef.
But here's what's missing here.
Yes, what do you
think? We
think?
don't have, and all deference to everybody else, we don't have a quintessential Montana steakhouse.
That's true too. I mean,
there's no Rib and Chop House.
The Dry Age Steakhouse. I mean, that's an obvious one.
I mean,
the Lugers.
Bozeman even. I mean, for better or worse, they have a steakhouse right downtown on the main drag. But we don't. People would say the Depot, but it's not really.
Wait. Which place is in Bozeman?
What's his name?
The Whiskey?
No.
Ted's.
Ted Turner's Steakhouse. I mean, at least that steakhouse.
They need a Chop House.
Well, people say you can go to Guy's Lolo Steakhouse, but that's not Missoula.
I heard that's good. Yeah.
It's good. It's old fashioned. It's a big grill, and they snap steak on, and you get a baked potato and bread, and that's it.
I mean, there's definitely a place for the Dry Age program, which is like, look, we're just saying
Wolfgang's.
We're taking a cut. We're like this.
Yes.
We're taking the New York Strip, and you just pick your cut. And they've got, the Dry Age program. Yeah, you spend for it, but I mean, there is no better way.
Steakhouse, Italian, maybe a real Chinese, and also there used to be here a long time ago. They don't have any more. just a fish house. People come in and they want to have trout. You know, they hear about trout. They've seen trout. They've even fished and let go trout.
Depot or
every once in a while, but you can't count on it. There's no fish house.
Yeah, you're right.
You go to here. You can even do a steak fish house kind of combination. But you don't have what you have. You don't even have some of the bigger chains here that maybe could work. I mean, some people would say you can go to the Outback, but that's still not downtown, and it's really I'd say a mid-level chain. It's not a top-level chain like Ruth Chris or something like that.
Right. But how about, wouldn't it be like a Wolfgang's or a Luger's, like that type of restaurant?
Well, Luger's doesn't franchise, I don't think.
No, but Wolfgang's.
Yeah, Wolfgang's. You know, you got the, like, what's his name?
Ruth Chris would be the one.
The one out of Boston that's franchised, the seafood place out of Boston that in Washington, D.C. and all over now.
Bonefish?
Well, Bonefish is one of them, and but you don't even have a P.F. Chang's here. I mean, P.F. Chang's would probably even work in Missoula.
Oh. Yeah, you're starting to think out on Brook Street. That stuff will start probably popping up. And
But I've lived here 22 years. 22 years waiting for a good Italian, a good good Chinese, good steak.
Good stuff. Drake, what's next for Saketome? Like so you're open about 2.5, 3 months.
Right.
What do you want to see happen in the next, like, when you open, obviously continuing your traffic, but growing your traffic?
Sure.
I can imagine you're never too busy.
Never too busy. We're always trying to get busier. But, with the idea that we're always going to be offering, like, a good, good dining experience no matter what. Like, if you get in, we don't want to be like, oh, we're so busy we can't take care of you, because it's still all about maintaining a good personal feel.
Sure.
You have expansion plans for another restaurant somewhere in Montana?
I mean, I always have plans.
Right.
But right now, no, the focus is making sure that, we're offering the experience that I think that Missoula needed. I mean, I really did believe that there was a reason why we looked at Missoula and said,
right,
there was a niche here. To your point, when you were asking about what are missing, we thought a really good sushi restaurant and a ramen house would be like two obvious choices off the top of our head.
Yep.
But so that for me right now, that's the focus. We're going to start trying to do some like special dinners where we can do like prefix course tasting menus where you come in and
cool.
We do wine pairings and stuff like
that. Sake tastings, because most people are not familiar with how great sake is.
And do it with food pairings.
Love it.
That's not really something that you see either, is the prefix tasting menus where it's like, look, you just buy the ticket, take the ride, and we'll keep you drinking.
Even Japanese scotch tasting.
Exactly.
There's plenty of great Japanese scotch.
We're excited by that.
Yep.
This is
our favorite topic.
This is our favorite topic. We always talk about food. It is a great topic. It's very personal.
Right.
I mean,
how else do you experience? Like, you get to immediately experience like a culture, and I think if Missoula could really develop that, this is the experience when you come here. You get to experience what Missoula is, which is obviously it's eclectic, fun, vibrant, active community.
I think that's exactly the point. We kind of own culture in Montana. I think if you think about Bozeman, really,
I'd agree with that.
Right? Yeah. And let's embrace it. Like, and I imagine we are in a certain extent, but we really do own culture in Montana and bringing different cultures here. Bozeman's definitely more transactional. It's big business going on there. There's just a lot of...
Well, it's half the size, though, so you can't really have the same draw there.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. So, like, let's lean into it.
Yep.
All right. When we come back, we'll have our final words with Drake Depke. Back after this. All right. We are back with Drake Depke from Saketome.
Drake, give me now all of the important digits, your website, your address, your phone number, how people can go online and read menu. I want to know the whole logistical piece.
Good. So Saketome and Michi Ramen, we're located at 137 West Front Street, downtown Missoula. Our phone number is 406-926-2555. We take reservations for larger parties. The downstairs Michi Ramen is seat at your will.
You can host parties too or events.
Yeah, I mean we're willing to book out the back room. We're willing to book out to large parties. Like we're all about accommodation, so we are open to anything. If you got a company party or something you want to do, give us a call.
And you cater.
Right now we're not catering, but we'll cater an event inside our building.
I see.
So we'll take care of you.
Website
Saketome Sushi. missoula.com. There's both locations on it. Make sure you click on the Missoula one for Missoula, Big Fork for Big Fork. Facebook, Saketome Missoula. Our handle on Instagram is Saketome Missoula.
And the ramen place has a website too, right?
Yep, Michi Ramen.
How do you spell Michi?
Michi.
Michi
MichiRamen.com. Yes.
All right.
Drake, it's been great. I'm hungry now. You're not open till dinner. I don't know what I'm going to do for 5 hours.
We're working on it. We'll get that lunch going here soon enough.
Will you? Is that in the plans?
Yeah, we'll be open for lunch soon enough. And I just want to say thank you so much to Missoula and to you guys for bringing me on. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Looking forward to meeting you.
We're happy to welcome you, by the way. You know what? This is big this is big for us.
Yeah, we're going to make sure you stick around.
We really appreciate it.
All right. Well, welcome. Thanks again. Arnie, I will see you next week.
Take care, Scott.